In this video, we're going to use Google Sheets to make a data table for our motion lab, for our dry ice puck on a inclined ramp, and to make some graphs from that data. When you open Sheets, you'll have these cells. You can click in a cell and you can just start typing. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the titles for all of our columns. You might want to skip forward. Here we've got incline number 8, and then we're going to have another data set over here for incline number, whatever the other incline you did. I'm going to highlight this row by clicking on the 2 over here, and then you can, in the format menu, you can go to text wrapping if it bothers you that stuff is cut off. You can have it wrapped so that it all shows up in the box and makes the box taller. I'm just going to grab some sample data from a worksheet. And paste it in here. One interesting thing about the spreadsheet, by the way, I don't know how much experience you guys have. If you have something like a 5 and a 6, and you grab this little handle down here, it'll automatically kind of take that pattern and follow it down for you. That's called filling. Another cool thing the spreadsheet will do for you is calculate these values so you don't have to punch them into calculators or even just do it in your head. But it makes more sense on your data where you've got like 30 points. But if I wanted to square the clock reading column, then I just need to click on the column. I type equals to tell it that I'm going to calculate something. And then I tell it what to do. I want to take this cell here and square it. So I'm going to click on this cell and hit caret 2. That's shift 6 if you can't find the caret. Hit enter and make sure it tells me the right answer. It's hard to tell when the number is 0, and then again, if I click on the cell and I drag this little handle down, then it will go ahead and fill that in all the way down. And something you have to be careful of when you're using spreadsheets is realize that when you drag that down and fill it, notice how the formula, right? The formula changes as you move down, A3, A4, A5, A6. So it's keeping a relative space there. It's going 2 columns over to the left and maintaining the same row. That'll happen to all your references as you drag and fill the handle. If I wanted to find the time interval, again, I hit the equal sign. Time interval is just 1 time minus the time before it, and I see that I should have left a blank space there. So this cell is where I want to go. Equals, there's my time final, minus my time initial. So this is the delta between 0 and 1. And it makes sense when I drag it down, they're all 1. Displacement, I can do the same thing. Equals final position minus the initial position. And I can drag that down. Average velocity is the displacement column divided by time interval. And then the middle time is the average of the clock readings, right? So I can say equals this plus Sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. This plus this cell divided by 2, and if I hit that, you'll see that there's my numbers, but they don't look right if you go down, and the reason is because of the order of operations there. So let's undo that. Check this again. What it's doing is dividing A4 by 2 and then adding it to A3. So I'm going to edit that so that I put parentheses around there. And then that comes out right. And there's one set of data. For my other set of data, I can highlight all this stuff and copy it, and I can just paste it right over here. Actually, before we do that, let's insert one more column in here, just so I have some space. Put that over here. You can change the colors of the text or something if you draw a border. You can be creative on how you want to separate these two sets of data. But let's say these numbers are a little bit different. Same but different. Let's say the clock readings are the same, but the positions are bigger. There you go. And again, remember these are just samples. Your data is going to vary by a lot. So we've got all our data in. You can see that when I copied and pasted the sheet, all of the formulas copied along as well. And now we want a graph. That's going to be kind of the harder part here. One thing you could do is go back to a program like Logger Pro that we were using before, and instead of trying to do all the data manipulation in Logger Pro, just take the columns that you want. Like for example, if I want to make a velocity time graph with two sets of data on it, just take this data, copy and paste it into a Logger Pro column, take this data, copy and paste it in a Logger Pro column, and make another data set and so on. But I can show you how to do the graphs in Sheets. It just takes a little while, and you have to kind of arrange your data a little bit carefully so that you can keep track of things. So let's say I'm trying to make a velocity versus time graph. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these two columns, and I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to scoosh them down a little bit, give myself some room. And you can see what happened when I pasted is I got all these error messages, and that's because the formula is pasted as well, and the formula for this average velocity and middle time has to do with stuff that's happening over here. Well, when you're way over here on the spreadsheet, those columns don't exist anymore. There's nothing there that's useful. So instead of hitting paste, what I'm going to do is if I right click and select paste special, I want to paste values only. The other place you'll find that is in the edit menu, paste special, paste values only. And that way it copies the numbers down and not the formulas that go in those columns. Now what I want to do, I want to put average velocity for the incline number 8 and the other incline on the same graph. So as you can see, the way I've calculated these middle times on the right, and I want that on the left, so I'm going to switch these columns around. Now these are only values, so I can go ahead and copy and paste without having to worry about that that problem we were having with the formulas. I'm going to change this so that I can read them better. Okay. Now, in order to organize our data so that we can put both sets of graphs on one set of axes, I'm going to take the other data and paste it below this data, sort of. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure that I understand that this is for incline 8. Okay. So I'm going to take my times from over here. My times. Copy. Go back here. And if I hit paste, again, I get an error there. Make sure that you are pasting special, paste values only. And then I want to take my velocities and I'm not going to put them directly underneath. I'm going to put them off one column over. Pasting values only. And then we've got two sets of data, one for incline number 8 and one for incline number whatever. And now let's see if we can make a graph that looks sort of like the stuff we've been talking about in class. So I'm going to highlight what I want to use as my data for the graph with the column headings and all. And then I'm going to go to Insert, Chart. And it'll insert a chart. And it has inserted that chart in a strange place in the spreadsheet, and because of the way I've organized my screen recording, I don't really want to mess with my sizes and such, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. But in the setup, so I've got setup and then customize. So in the setup, I want to pick the type of chart that I'm going to use. And for this class, scatter chart is what we're going to use right now for this particular graph. And now you can see the graph looks pretty close to what we've been doing, but there's some details that are missing, things like titles and axis labels with units. And even on the scale, you'll see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but there is no 0 on the x-axis here, so we need to change some things. Oh, before I get ahead of myself though, you can make sure that you've got your data arranged right, because the x-axis will say middle time, that's the one that we wanted, the one on the very left, and then these series are what's on the y-axis. So I've got the average velocity for incline number 8 and the average velocity for incline number whatever you guys do. Now I'm going to go to customize, and here's where it gets kind of ugly. Okay, so for chart and axis titles, this is where you do all of your axis labels and your title of the graph. And you can see that when you pull this arrow down, you actually get a whole bunch more stuff. And even when you click on chart title, you can see that you can change the chart title, the horizontal axis title, the vertical title. So we'll work on the chart title first. We're making a graph of velocity versus time. And you can change the font size and whatnot if you want to, but I'm fine just leaving it like this. Now I want to change the horizontal axis title. So this is the time in clicks. And I want to change the vertical axis title, velocity. And now the graph looks pretty good. So we'll turn that up. Where it says series, this is where we're going to find our trend line. So we're going to click on this trend line option, and then the type. We want linear for this graph. For your curved graphs, you might use polynomial or power series. So trend line. And then for label, you want to say use equation. And now you'll see that up here it gives you the equation for each one of those trend lines. It's not all fancy, and I won't put the units in there, but at least you'll know what your slope is. You won't have to do your slope calculation. Then for horizontal axis, we want to make sure that the minimum value there is 0. So there we go. And now I think this graph looks about like one of our graphs should look. Okay, and you can do similar things for position versus time and position versus time squared. And another thing is you can take this graph and drag it so that it's not right on top of all of your stuff. And the other cool thing is you can take this graph, copy and paste it into another Google Doc. But when you do that, let's see if I can show you. Copy. Make ourselves some generic Google Doc. So say you've got a lab report that you're doing, and you've got, graphs. If we paste that in there, you want to paste it unlinked. That way it just belongs to the document, and I don't have to worry about being able to see your work. Now, one thing that's going to happen if you do that is if you make any changes, it will not show up in this new document. So if I went back and I noticed a difference, I'd have to go back into my lab report and change it. So make sure it's the way you want it to be before you paste it in. And that's making graphs with sheets.